Hey everyone, Taylor here, and thanks for listening to the Bonfire Briefing Podcast. The intro for this episode is going to be a little different. As all of you know by now, 19 children and 2 teachers were shot and killed in a mass school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. Uvalde is a little over 80 miles west of San Antonio, which is where I live. I wanted to take this opportunity to amplify some ways you can help the local community there in Uvalde. If you live around Uvalde, San Antonio, or anywhere else in South Texas, please consider giving blood at a blood drive near you. Another way to help is to donate money to some of the various fundraisers for the families. Uvalde CISD has created a Robb School Memorial Fund that you can donate to via mail or by sending money through Zelle to robbschoolmemorialfund@gmail.com. If you want to write a check, the mailing address for the Memorial Fund is 200 East Nopal Street, Uvalde, Texas 78801. Be sure to make checks payable to Robb School Memorial Fund. The City of Uvalde is also accepting donations for medical expenses. Checks should be addressed to the City of Uvalde and sent to P.O. Box 799, Uvalde, Texas 78802. GoFundMe has grouped all of these fundraisers together in a single category and made them really easy to find. I'll put a link to that GoFundMe page on Twitter when I release this episode. Here's a list of some other organizations that have created funds or fundraisers that you can donate through. The University Health San Antonio, the League of United Latin American Citizens, One Star Foundation, the Community Foundation of the Texas Hill Country, Victims First, Catholic Charities Archdiocese of San Antonio, and HEB even has an option to donate at checkout when shopping both in person and online. If you're able, please consider making a donation. The community in Uvalde has been devastated and they desperately need our help. No one thinks it'll happen in their community until it does. We need to come together and support the people of Uvalde however we can. Just a note before I get into the podcast, this was recorded last weekend before the shooting. My guest today is UFC Welterweight prospect Preston Parsons. He's coming off an impressive win over Evan Elder at UFC Vegas 52. We talked about that, his path to the UFC, and what's next for him. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, there we go. Preston Parsons, welcome to the show.
Good to be on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. Really do appreciate it. You looked great in your win over Evan Elder. It was just a super impressive victory, especially for someone, just really kicking off their UFC career. It seemed like no matter where the fight was, on the feet, on the ground, whatever, Elder just didn't really have any answers for you, in the striking or the grappling. Can you talk to me a little bit about that win and how you're feeling about it about a month later?
I'm feeling good about it still. I'm still kind of living it up. I've never won a big. I mean, I've won plenty of fights, but not a UFC fight. So that definitely means a lot more to me. But Evan is super tough. His kicks were good. My forearms were still kind of lumped up. I don't know if it will ever go back to normal, but he had some good kicks. But I was training really hard for that fight. I had a lot of good training coming into it. I had a lot of good people in my camp with me. I have a lot of good fighters here at home. A lot of good pro fighters and amateur fighters. I went to Atlanta for a few weeks to train at ATT with the Lima brothers. Okay. So I was pretty confident coming into the fight. I knew that if it stayed standing, I would do just fine. And on the ground, I felt like I could get the submission.
Yeah, well, you looked great on the ground. Like your wrestling was awesome. Like the timing of your takedowns, the reversals, it was all great. Especially some of your ground and pound, man. You had some moments there where you were throwing just some brutal ground and pound. I think at one point you started raining down some elbows, and you cut him above and below his eyes, and it was brutal, man. I thought you were about to wrap it up there. Were you surprised by Elder's toughness and the fact that you weren't able to finish him?
Definitely, and I was trying the whole fight to get him out of there. Really tough. He was doing a good job when I was in mount to kind of scramble, move his hips side to side. Made it hard for me to control the position to land some good ground and pound. But the ones that I did sneak in, I definitely threw them with intent. So I know I got one of the cuts in the first round. I think it was just like a short elbow. But I think the last one was in the third. But he was definitely super tough. And I talked to him in the ER, and he said that everything I hit him with felt solid.
Yeah, no, I bet it did. You cut him like you had him like cut above and below like both of his eyes, like there at the end of the fight. It was crazy to see it. It was even crazier that he lasted the whole fight. Obviously, just a super tough dude.
Right. That just says more about his toughness. He was super game the whole fight. He was still fighting back the whole fight too. It's not like he gave up at any point.
Right. Yeah. He was still putting forth offense. He was in there, but man, you were too much to handle in that fight for him. You mentioned your fight camp and the training and everything. I know for your UFC debut, you didn't have a full camp. It was more of a shorter notice type thing. Can you talk a little about your preparation for the fight with Evan Elder, and just how much having that full camp really benefited you?
It definitely helps with everything. It helps with the weight cut. It helps with game planning a little bit. When I fought D-Rod, made my debut, I fought about a month before that. It was June 5th, and I fought in Jacksonville on the regional card, and then wasn't really training too much, kind of taking it easy after that win. And then we had a week notice to fight D-Rod, so we kind of just went for that one. And I definitely wouldn't take it back. It was a good learning experience. But for the training camp, it was supposed to be Luis Cosi before he got COVID, I guess, right before the fight. So I ended up fighting Evan instead. But it was just a lot of hard. It was a lot of hard training, but it was kind of similar to what I've done in the past. I work a little bit of everything. I have wrestling days, jiu-jitsu days, striking days. One thing I focused a little bit more on this past camp was doing a little less sparring and kind of focusing on pad work and hard hit workouts, Tabata workouts. And I had some different coaches kind of work for me this past fight to kind of improve on some of the areas that I needed to be improved in.
Yeah, no, and I think it showed, man. Like I said, just a super impressive win that you had back in April. I want to kind of transition here, talk a little bit about how you got into MMA, because I feel like every fighter kind of has a different story about how they got into it. What was your first experience like getting into combat sports?
It was a little kind of newer, I guess, around the area that I'm in Jacksonville. I started right at 10 years ago. So I was too young to fight. So there wasn't very many amateur promotions to fight for. But I first got into fighting and combat sports when I was really young. I was super into the Rocky movies and just underdog story. And I wasn't the best athlete as a kid. So, but I definitely, just the underdog, kind of being the person that isn't super talented, isn't super athletic, and still kind of make something of it. So that's kind of what got me into the sport. And when I was, I think, 11 or 12, I started doing karate. Then that didn't last that long. But I got into MMA when I was 16, and it was my choice. So I was there every day. I was training every day. I had good wrestling coaches, a lot of good people around, and it's since then just only gotten better.
Yeah. What has that journey to the UFC been like? Did you always know that you would end up in the UFC one day?
Yes, I've always kept that in the back of my mind. I always knew I would get there. Just so 10 years of doing it and not getting there is a little discouraging. So it was discouraging towards the end. But I have a really good manager, Steve Swedish, that kind of really pushed me to get to the UFC and pushed getting me there, I guess. So everything happens for a reason, and time is important. So I think everything happened in perfect timing.
Right. Yeah. And shout out Steve Swedish, man, for helping set this up. Really glad that we were able to, work through him and get this done. When did you know that you wanted to go pro? Like, was fighting pro something you wanted to do? Like when you started training at 16, was it always something you wanted to do? When did you know that you wanted to make cage fighting your career?
I knew before I even started training. I saw it. My stepdad introduced me to some of like the original UFC fights, and I was friends with some of the wrestlers. And I'd always loved boxing in the front yard and stuff. So as soon as I saw MMA and I saw that I could fight, I knew right then that's something I was going to do, and that's what I was going to do.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people. It's just like once they finally took that step, to actually making it happen, there's no turning back. It definitely takes a special kind of person to fight in MMA as a career. But for those type of guys like you, like Gabe Green, like a whole bunch of people, you probably can't imagine yourself doing anything different, can you?
No, not anymore. And even before, I'd probably be miserable doing something else.
Yeah. Now, something that was interesting that I heard from Gabe Green, because he grew up out in California, and got his start out there. And I heard you say the same thing that he did, that there wasn't, that it wasn't a big amateur scene in California for him and Florida for you. It's kind of confusing to me. You figure that those would be two states that would have a bigger amateur MMA scene, don't you? You think?
Right, yeah, definitely. I know South Florida's kind of always had them, but again, the sport's growing. Just even over the last 5 years, it's grown a ton since then. So, and also for me, I was so young that I wasn't even allowed to fight until 18. So,
right.
When I turned 18, it was on from there on.
Oh yeah, no. And did the lack of amateur opportunities there in Florida kind of lead you to going pro early? Like if you could go back, would you have had more amateur fights before you went pro, or do you think you did it, just right?
For me, it was never really fine. There was always one good promotion around. I always had Combat Night was I actually Mitchell Chimotley is where I met my manager, and he's always been a good guy and he's a good promoter. So Combat Night was always there, but other than that, there was no other promotions nearby, and they only came to Jacksonville, I think, once a year. So kind of having to travel to Lakeland, to Miami, and everywhere else to fight. But Combat Night's always been a good promotion for me.
Yeah. Do you still train over there in Jacksonville? You might have already said that, but do you still train over there?
Yes. Yeah. I train here. I own a gym here too. So I own a gym. I have a partner, and we have a good fight team. So we have me and probably like a half dozen pros and a dozen amateurs.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. What, how was that process like, starting up a gym?
The gym I was at before, I kind of ran pretty much all the operations then. I taught all the classes and stuff like that. So it wasn't too unfamiliar for me. But opening up right in the middle of COVID, that was kind of tough. So getting through like the first 6 months, first year was kind of difficult. But then after that, again, I have a lot of good It's not just me there. I'm not the only fighter. So I have a lot of good coaches and a lot of good coaching coming in and out of there.
Right. That's awesome. Do you happen to catch any of the fights over the weekend?
Oh yeah. Yep. I watched all of them last night, but one I watched, I guess probably closest is the drawing a blank on their name, but Michelle Ponzian. I can't pronounce the last name that well.
Right.
But the 270ers, the co-main last night, I watched that one, and I watched the main event of two, of course. I think Holly Holm won the fight for sure.
Yeah, that was definitely going to be my next question there. I think everybody who watched that main event is kind of scratching their head a little bit. I mean, you look at how many strikes Holly landed compared to Ketlin, and Holly had over 10 minutes of control time. I mean, it's really crazy that Holly didn't get her hand raised there at the end.
Exactly. Yeah. Seeing the numbers after the fight just made it even more clear. But it seemed like Holly was the aggressor for the most part too.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I think we were just all expecting Holly to get her hand raised, and then it didn't happen. And of course, they talked to her after the fight, and even since then, she's said that she thought she won, and just like pretty much everyone else except for those two judges sitting there.
She took it well, because I know she had to have been upset.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine, and I talked with Gabe Green a little bit about this too. It's just, bad judges have always existed. It's just kind of it's a thing about the sport that, the fans, the fighters, even Dana, complain about, all the time. It seems like there's always some controversial decision that's lighting everybody up. And I saw some people talking about, like ways to remedy that. I don't know how much you can do about the actual judges themselves, but I saw some people talking about, implementing like an open scoring system. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Do you think that that's something that the UFC should look at implementing? What do you think?
No, I've seen some stuff like that, but I like the way that it's done right now. I don't think they could do anything much better, but maybe make sure the judges are actually knowledgeable. And I'm not exactly sure, like, if they can see all the numbers right in front of them the whole time. It's all like computerized now, where it shows like how many strikes are being landed. And I know they're watching the fight too, but if they were watching that fight, then they definitely would have picked home to win. So it's hard to say. It's hard to answer that one, but I do kind of like the way it is now, because like it would be a little probably biased if they had a bunch of like an open judging.
Yeah, and I've seen some people say, like if you let the fighters know what the score is going into each round, like you might have some fighters that are like, shit, I'm up 2-3 rounds, why not just kind of coast my way through, you know what I mean? Like, so there are some issues there, but man, I don't know, it's a problem that's been around for a while. And like you said, I don't know that there's an easy fix for it. But yeah, I don't know. Open scoring, it's something I think Invicta does open scoring. I might have the promotion wrong, but there is one kind of notable promotion that does it. And I know even with promotions that have open scoring, some fighters tell their coach not to let them know what the round is, because they don't want to know.
Right. Yeah, I'd probably want to know, but how do they do it? Do they do it like on a social media they judge, or is like a website where they're watching and they can do it online?
I'm actually not really sure exactly how they do it. But it's it's just it's an interesting system. And then PFL has like a unique judging system too, where like the commentators judge the rounds as they're watching them, and then they've got like a whole they've got like an algorithm. I can forget what they call it, something, but like there's an algorithm that they use to determine like who the algorithm thinks won that round. I don't know.
That's pretty cool. That's interesting. I need to look into that more.
Yeah. Go. Yeah. It's I've introduced a lot of my friends to like the UFC and then some other MMA promotions, and PFL is one that always sticks out to them, just because of the way that they do things differently over there, especially with the scoring system. It's real neat. You'll have to take a look at it. Yeah. What did you think about the co-main event though? I think a lot of people who were watching last night were really looking forward to to those two fighting. What was your takeaway?
Ponzinibbio, yeah, I think explosive. He's doing all the flying knees and stuff, so I think he fought pretty good. I definitely wanted to see some backflips and more flying knees and stuff, but other than that, it was a good fight. There was a lot of back and forth. It was a close decision. It's hard to really say who won that one as well.
Yeah, it was just back and forth, the whole way through. Like you said, super close decision. I've actually got to wrap up here before too long, but like I was saying earlier, man, your win over Elder was super impressive. I mean, wrestling looked great. You dominated them in pretty much every aspect of the fight. What are you looking at moving forward? What are you thinking's next for you? You have any names in mind? What are you thinking?
I'm watching the welterweight weight class a little bit more closely now that I've gotten some wins, or I got that win. I broke my hand in that fight. I had surgery a week ago, so I'm healing my hand up, but hopefully I'll be fighting again in October. So October, before the year's up, I want to fight again and hopefully fight like a top 15 guy, top 20 guy, get a number next to my name.
Oh yeah. Yeah. How are you feeling after that surgery? How's your hand feeling?
It feels fine. It's been a week now, so it's healing up good. It was kind of surreal the other day. I saw the x-rays and I have a big screw going down the back of my hand now. So that was kind of different to see, but it's healing up good. I can almost use my finger again.
Okay. How long do you think it'll take before you're able to get back in there and get back to training some?
They told me 12 weeks total. It's been one. So I think I'll be kind of training again in 6, maybe a month from now, kind of rolling around and touching a little bit, but I'm not supposed to punch for 12, but I think I can start punching again after 8 lightly, and then hopefully smashing things again by 12 weeks and get something scheduled.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely real excited to see you fight again, man. You know, after a win like that, you know, you really just look forward to what's next for, you know, someone like you to come off a big win like that, man. I'm going to be watching close. I'm real excited about it. Just before we wrap up here, you have any sponsors or anybody you want to shout out, anything like that?
Ruby SE, my manager Steve, my gym Elevate MMA, and all the guys that train there. And that's about it, honestly, right now.
Yeah, special shout out to Steve again for helping us get this set up, man. I really do appreciate you coming on the show and talking to me. I've enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun. Anytime you want to come back on, man, just hit me up and we'll make it happen.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye. Hey everyone, and thanks for listening to the Bonfire Briefing Podcast. That was my conversation with UFC welterweight prospect Preston Parsons. If you haven't watched his most recent win over Evan Elder, I would highly recommend doing so. His wrestling, striking, and overall skill set really shined in that fight. You can't help but think that he has a bright future in the UFC. I really enjoyed talking to Preston today, and I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Bonfire Brief Pod so you don't miss the next episode. Also, who should I talk to next? Shoot me a DM or reply to one of my tweets on Twitter and let me know. I'm always looking for new guests to invite on, and I would love any recommendations that y'all have. Thanks for listening.